Hello, and welcome to another episode of Joy and Gratitude. I'm here with my wonderful co host, Miss Beth Mercurio. And Beth, so good to see you. Love the color.
Thank you.
Question: what are you thinking we should be talking about today?
I want to talk about values,
Mm.
personal values. It's one of those things that people talk about usually when something maybe isn't going so right or
Yeah.
they're having an issue. It could be with their children. This is why I love personal values because they're personal, which means you can really bump into having interactions with people that don't carry the same values as you pretty much any day of the week, because we all get to choose what we value. And I thought we could talk a little bit about that. How do we choose what we value? Is it a constantly organic and evolving process where do our values change, or do we have values that sort of fundamentally stay with us? Like, what's the makeup of that? And I think I have a lot of beliefs around personal values as an evolution, that they can change, but that fundamentally some of them are part of kind of who we are and
Yeah.
do serve as guardrails for what impacts us throughout our lives. So I will say, obviously, when somebody does not hold a value that you hold, it can feel uncomfortable. It can feel like conflict when actually it's just you value something potentially more than they do. And it comes back to our beautiful conversations of connection and communication and vulnerability in how we interact with those people that maybe don't hold the same values, and how can we still stay open and in conversation with them. But understanding our values, our own values, helps us as we navigate that throughout our entire lives, I would say. So if you know what they are, then you can use them to help you. And if you don't know what they are, we can talk a little bit about that. Like, how do you figure out what your values are? What are some of the cues that you know that's something that really matters to you? Or have you done kind of a values exercise? Lots of people do that throughout their lives. So, values, Neo, that's what we're going to chat about.
I think people really start becoming aware of their values um, when they are in college.
Say more.
Um, well, high school, late high school, college. That's when you start having those opinions about yourself, opinions about what you believe in, what you don't like, what you care about, what you don't care about. And it starts forming, really forming, because up to then, you basically were following the values that were presented to you by your parents, by your school, by your clergy, by those in authority were telling you this is the way that you behave, this is what we believe, this is the way life should be. These are the assumptions you should have in life. And then when you get into those late teenage years, you're reading more, you're exposing yourself to much more information, and you start forming your value set that goes along with who you want to be. And they are very personal. Values are extremely personal. You could be in a house that everybody was raised exactly the same, and not one person has the same set of values. Maybe some core values, about valuing family, valuing love, valuing different basic things. But when it comes to what you cherish, what are your boundaries especially, um, that's very personal, you
Yeah,
know.
let's talk. Say more about how you see values and boundaries interacting, because I think that's an interesting concept to sort of talk through. Is that's a way in which I do think, if you don't know, if somebody said to you, "What are your personal values?" and you don't have an immediate answer, right? You
Mhm.
don't know off the top of your head. Okay, these are the ones that really ring true for me. As you mentioned, we're learning that. Some of us are learn it, and I do think that's a ripe age, is when you've sort of gone off and you're more independent, and then you
Mhm.
realize, what do you really value? But I think if you don't know, or you haven't gone through that exercise to really kind of tap into values helping you to navigate how you show up each and every day, making sure that you live in alignment or in accordance with your values. Boundaries, I think, are a good way for you to help identify if we talk about override, overextension, doing something that you don't want. Those things, I think, help you to say, wow, I must value this. I must value this thing if it's making me feel really agitated in some way. So that's I think that is I'll give you an example because it's hard. I'm speaking a little bit ambiguous. So for me, one of my values is growth. And I feel as if that's, to be honest, until you start to realize that everybody doesn't value growth, like I thought everybody valued growth. Isn't everybody curious, wants to try new things, is willing to do something they've never done before, looks at the lessons in life, looks backwards and reflects, like, what did I learn from that, such that I can take that learning and grow? That's something that has been super important to me for a long time, and now especially, but
Mhm.
very much a value to me. When someone isn't curious and isn't say when something happens and it doesn't go right and they're frustrated or they're angry or I watch them getting emotionally charged and they don't ask the question, what did I learn from that? How will I do it differently the next time? And try to sort of use that information to progress forward. I get a little stunned. Now that's on
Mhm.
me, that's my learning, but I go,
Yep, yep.
"Oh," and then I have to pause and go, "Hey, just because that's how you operate, just because you value growth as like a top important value." I do love this. Value growth and change and barking dogs. Um, that it really does allow for other people to have their own values. It doesn't matter. I value people that come and take barking dogs away. That was very sweet. Did you see the magic door? It was
I did. It was
that was
amazing.
that was pretty cool. Uh, anyway, that was really cool. So the magic door has come. Now the dog barking has stopped. But I do think that's an example I'm hoping that people can understand where I value growth, but not everybody does. And I need to be softer when I notice that somebody doesn't automatically trying to grow from things. Sometimes that's not what's most important to them. They maybe it's something totally different that they value.
Absolutely.
What do you value, Neo?
So many things. Um, I really one of the things that's really important to me is not judging and labeling people.
Mm,
Um, I've always had an aversion to placing people in boxes and not letting a person be who they are. Um, so I don't, I mean, I try very hard because I'm a human and humans judge. We judge every minute of the day. That's the way we make our selections sometimes, most of the times. Uh, but I have an inclination to be as non judgmental as possible, and I work really hard at it. However, one thing that I think that we need to be very clear about that we end up understanding our values in the storm. See,
mm,
it's very easy to say, I value love, I value peace, I value, and we can go through all the beautiful words. But when you hit the storm, when your life gets turned upside down and it makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, you're just sitting there and you're just trying to figure out why. That's when your values come into reign. That's when you have to make those decisions of what those boundaries are and what you can accept and what you cannot accept. We are all made to make our own conscious decisions on what our truth is. And our value is our truth as an individual, it's our core. And when we see things that don't make sense, that are wrong, either we make our decision and our values to do, to not accept it, and to do whatever we can do within our power to go against it, or we can make the decision in our value system that we can be complacent.
Mm.
But, and that's just one example, not going any further with that. But that's where values come from. They come from the storm. Values are easy when there is no storm because it's never been tested. But when your values get tested, that's when you know who you are.
It's funny. I agree. And I think as we're talking, I'm realizing the other piece of values that when I was thinking about what are my values, one of the ones that I have is achievement. And I remember not loving that value, thinking, wow, that's what you value? You value achievement? But when I mapped myself, I realized that I absolutely do. And it is a motivator for me.
Mm-hmm.
And watch the judging. I self-judged that made me like, I was like, gosh, you value achievement. But I've been going through stuff. I've been in a purge lately. And I keep seeing these things throughout my life that I achieved, which I mean, I'm not looking at that very often, but I'm going through bins and going, oh my gosh, like I got this or I did that and I'm like, you know what? Achievement is a value to me. It's what motivates me to work hard. I
Yep.
like achieving things. And it's part of what makes me who I am. So when you said values are core to us, I also think we have to remind ourselves not to judge even our own values. Like valuing achievement got me where I am today. And if I didn't value achievement, maybe I wouldn't do that. And don't judge the people who don't value achievement because honestly, in some ways, I wish, if I could say, like, I wish I didn't value it so much. Other than when I look back, I go, well, it's because of you valuing achievement that you are where you are. You can't sort of like decide and pick and choose. It's like, I'm here because I value achievement. I do love and have a lot of admiration for people who that isn't a high value for them. And maybe they still are able to achieve things, but it's not necessarily like what is driving them. I don't know. This is like, as I'm talking, I'm thinking about it. Like they've got other values. It's so interesting. And maybe I just need to stop, thinking about what other people value in that
No,
way because
absolutely
it's
not.
like,
Yeah.
right? Yo, yeah, tell me, because this is interesting. I'm
Yeah.
watching
So
myself
what
get circular.
achievement? You value your definition of achievement.
Yes. Neo, you nailed it.
I
That's it.
value my definition of achievement. I'm
Yes.
I'm right there with you. But those people that you and that's why judgment was a big thing for me because I recognize that we all have our own definition of these words. What I define as love may not be your definition of love, right? What I defined as achievement, whatever, is not the same definition because we've had different paths.
Yes.
And we've decided that that definition is the one that we value. But my thing is with the non judgment is that I am not going to judge your definition of achievement. And maybe your definition of achievement is being able to rest when you feel that you need to rest and not having to chase titles. And that is an achievement that you've been able to do for yourself. Not my definition of achievement, but it's your definition and it works for you. I'm not going to go against it. I'm going to applaud that that is what's bringing you peace and joy. No problem with me. I'm going to value mine and I'm going to let you value yours and we're in harmony. But that's the whole thing. There is nothing wrong with your values as long as you are clear into what you're defining as such. Now, let's also make sure that your values are not hurting anyone else.
Well, and That's actually what I was gonna say, which is in families, I'm sure my values, I and we talked about this, like children finally or at a certain age, whether however you were brought up, whatever your life was, as you come into independence, you do get to choose your own. But I think when you said that, I thought, right, I think it can be hard as a child to be brought up, and I'll speak to my I mean, I'll own it. My children grew up with somebody who valued achievement, and I made that a clear value for them, whether they had the same definition or not. They had to live by my definition.
Mhm.
And I will say now I'm trying to change that definition to be more open to whatever it is that they're doing is their like what you just described is how I think I have come around to that. But while I was in the thick of it, was like my definition of achievement was their definition. Like, well, you need to work harder. You need to get XYZ grades. You need to have XYZ awards. You need to, and now, only now can I realize that's just because that is what drove me. And of course, sometimes when I got the pushback, it was because that wasn't necessarily what drove them. And how beautiful to acknowledge that. And I have acknowledged that with them. I sort of have said, like, wow, I really pushed in certain ways, and but I will say now they're great. Now they get to choose. So in some ways, this is the growth value of mine. Like I'm now going to go back to my growth value. In some ways, if I gave them one guardrail to be like, I don't actually ever want to be achieving in that way, and they are now making a choice around where they want to be and how much they value and what
Mhm.
definition of achievement means to them. I think there's power in that if they use it to grow and show and shape themselves. So I guess that's life. The people that we interact with, whether it be our family, our friends, our colleagues, they all shape us and they all give inputs into what we care about. And we get to choose, is it going to impact me? Am I going to shift a value? Am I going to shift a boundary?
Mhm.
Based on what's happening with these other people in my world and in my life. And I do think when you certainly when you're me and you're in growth mindset, there are people that come in with different value set that maybe I'm surprised by, have never seen or felt, and I have to go, "Oh, how do I feel about that? What how does that relate to me?" And I think you're right, values are personal. So when we're confronted with somebody having something else, how can we acknowledge that as a positive thing and use it to kind of see whether or not there's pieces of that that we want to integrate or whether or not we're just like curious and that's interesting and not for me. I think you're that's why I guess when I first started to talk about this topic, I was saying I do think they evolve. And in a
Mhm.
way, that's just the definition of them evolving is you're going to have inputs throughout your life that may end up enabling you to make a different choice about values or incorporate other things into your value system.
Absolutely. As you were stating that, the first thing that came to mind is the shift that we've had over the years with our communication and information. So, whether you're getting your information from social media, you're getting your information just from research, which is now so at the fingertips. But we walk around with these mini computers that give us answers to anything we could think of, whether it's in our car, whether, in our handheld phones, to anything you can think of. I mean, we give computers to babies these days. So that shifts the values because now we are given information that we didn't have. I mean, for the longest, our value systems were very much based on our community
Mhm.
because that was our life. Our life was based on our community. Everybody went pretty much to the same few churches, um, went to the same schools, played in the same park, played the same sports. We were a community that you could say um, followed the same value system. It was our norms, and that's what people lived by was norms. Now we are in an international exposure ecosystem. No matter where you live, no matter where you are, you have access to the world. And that has created an explosion on how values are developed, selected, and adapted. So it's very difficult for older generations, from boomers to Gen X, to navigate the change in value system of our millennials and Gen Zs because of the fact that we came from the community based value genre. And now there is this complete international open source value system that is so different. And that's when, we have to give everyone, I always say, I say the word grace so much. I think in every single episode I say it. But what I'm trying to say is give everyone the ability to make those decisions for themselves and also be curious about the whys. And it may not be your value, but give them the freedom to have their own.
You if you didn't say it, I was coming in, I was landing in with curiosity because it is the asking. When you don't understand, when you or if you feel differently. I mean, I keep saying that because I with embodiment, I use my body to tell me when I'm like, I whoa, like Neo just said something and I don't know, I'm not loving it. Like it's not resonating. I'm not feeling connected, right? You can watch. Do I feel connected and I want more? Or am I a little bit more withdrawn? Am
Mhm.
I neutral? These are all things that we can be noticing
Right.
as we're interacting with people. And I think the way in which I have grown the most is when I get that feeling of even neutrality, but not connection, like neutrality or
Mm.
disconnection, asking more questions. That is really interesting. Like, tell me more or help me understand, or I've never thought about it that way. Tell me how you came to think of it that way with real curiosity, authentic. I'm really curious, not because there's such a nuance between questioning and judging and curiosity. And I think if we could all get better at true curiosity and coming across from open-hearted curiosity versus like, I don't agree with you or I already feel disconnected, therefore, but that piece, that's where my work continues every day is to come open and with whole heart to listen. But if you could imagine that we shape each other in this new world, because I agree
Yeah.
with you, community still, I think, positive and negative
Mhm.
microcosms exist where like if you're in a certain
Absolutely.
community,
Absolutely.
they value X and everybody's kind of moving towards that way. But I
Right.
agree, people now the difference in a good way, it can be good and bad, but mostly they get to see there's
Right.
other things out there. It's not just their community. So I love your like naming that as a real thing is very
Mhm.
important. There's a world of communities out there and you're
Right.
just in one and now you see all the other communities.
Exactly.
But this idea of real curiosity and coming from that place of wanting to better understand what it's like in your shoes, when you can do that well, you build connection regardless of whether you land agreeing, disagreeing, shifting your value, or just appreciating that people have other values. That is where I want us all to get to. This idea of being really curious about other people's values and open to shifting our own when it makes sense.
One of the powerful things that you have just stated was genuine curiosity. Um, there's so many people that ask questions, but they're not asking questions truly in a curious mode. They're asking questions ready to pounce
Mhm.
on their opinion. Um, And it can be so uncomfortable. It could just be so jarring that, they ask you a question, but there's no real interest in your answer.
Mhm.
Um, and the curiosity really should be about, I want to know more about you. I value you enough to want to understand you. You're worthy of being valued instead of valuing a point more than the person that's right in front of you. Because it really, that point can wither with time. Um, but the person's a lot more important.
And they have, I mean, as humans, we're complex. So
Yeah,
maybe, and I know, like, if you allow for them to have the, as a human to be a good human, then you maybe are tapping into one piece of many parts of their value structure. So
exactly.
yeah, you can't like hold on, which I think is where we get into conflict. You hold on to, I don't agree with this value, but hello, there's still all this other part of that human
Oh
where
my
where
God.
you likely align and have some connection. And if you stay open to understanding, I'm sure in that conversation you'll learn, oh, and there's a softer spot where you do have some sort of shared value structure, and you just didn't allow yourself to get there if you're not coming from authentic curiosity around that first place where maybe you're not totally aligned.
That is such a powerful moment. One of the things that um, one of the things that's really interesting is forgetting about all the other aspects of the human and just focusing on on that situation, on that value is mind blowing to me. A person has been kind to you, a person has been there through the good and the bad, a person has shown up, and all of a sudden there is one element, whatever the value is, that occurred, and you wiped it all out
Mm.
because of that one thing. And there's dimensions, right, on everything. That one thing could have been, murder. Um,
Yeah,
didn't value
there's
life or
yes,
something.
there's
And that makes
extremes.
sense for you not to feel like connected with that person anymore. But let's be more realistic. Life is usually not at that level. It's
Yeah.
usually lesser things. Um, we need to look at the whole person.
Mhm.
We need to treat each other with the same humanity we want for ourselves. That's a value,
Absolutely.
and just understand that our values will shift, but they do represent who we are, and they are special, and we need to lean in with curiosity every single time we engage with each other, because that's the way we can truly connect. So, we talked about the storm that usually reveals what our values are. So I went with the joy song for this episode as A Bridge Over Troubled Water
Mm.
by Simon and Garfunkel, because it really is about understanding your way through navigating this funny little thing we call life and leaning into those things that we truly love and value. Let's see what the Gratitude Rocks have to say.
Yeah.
Beautiful green.
It's curious.
Ah! We could not have planned that any better.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. So for those of you watching and hopefully hearing, I mean, there's 30 some odd words in this Gratitude Rocks bag. So it's beautiful. The word is curious. And I don't really need to say much. This is like a drop the mic moment where we talked all around getting curious about each other as humans and staying connected and understanding our value structures can be different, but fundamentally, we're all humans. And there's a lot of love in the world when we just treat each other with curiosity, authenticity, and respect.
Nothing else to be said. Thank you all for joining us on this episode of Joy and Gratitude. We look forward to seeing you again.